What is up, guys? It's Psychedelical here, coming at you with a video. It's my first video in quite a while, some of you may notice if you have ever seen me before. But I'm very excited. I have a lot of video or stories containing psychedelic or drug content that I'm excited to post and record. So, yeah, let's get started. This video, as you may have already guessed by the title, is about the time that I did LSD, DMT, and ketamine all mixed together in one nice slurry cocktail to smooth out those wrinkles in my brain. All right. So, to get this day started, I had made plans with my buddy Daniel to meet up and do some acid. And so our plan was just to drop a tab of acid, and then this kid Jack, who I also knew but hadn't seen since high school, um, was also supposed to come over at some point after work. He wasn't going to do acid, but he wanted to try DMT for the first time, which I happen to have. So he comes over later in the story, but so this fateful day, I show up to Daniel's house around. Oh, I don't know. It was probably just right after noon when I showed up, and because we dropped the acid not long after, and we dropped it around 12:20, I remember. So we drop the acid, and we smoke a little bit of weed. I think we smoke a cigarette in his garage, and then we go to his room. And he lives in a pretty complex living situation. So there's this really nice, really big house that's owned by a couple, and they are only there for like half the year. They weren't there when we were doing this, even though they wouldn't have cared. But excuse me, Jesus. Um, they they rent out all the rooms in the house pretty much except for the master bedroom, which is theirs, of course. But there's two apartments in this built into this house as well, one downstairs and one upstairs. And so I've never been into the one downstairs just because I don't know those people well, but the one upstairs is rented by Daniel's sister and her boyfriend Mark, and Mark comes into the story later. So remember that name. So we go back to Daniel's room and we're just hanging out, playing some video games, petting his cat while coming up on the acid. And eventually we decide that we want to go back out to the garage and smoke some weed and a cigarette. So we go out there and we're smoking and we're listening to music, just having a good time. We're probably out there for an hour or two at this point. And the whole time I kind of wanted to go somewhere, but we were waiting for Jack. And there was one point when Daniel had said something that kind of threw me off. Like I went to change the music and he goes, "I know what you've been doing." And I asked him, what have I been doing?" He goes, "With the music." And I go, "I'm just playing music." And he goes, "You know what I mean." And then he gets all confused, and then we just kind of move on. And he also, at one point, had said, I asked him if he was good, because he looked kind of distraught. And he goes, "Oh, I'm just going over a million things in my head, like a million miles an hour. Kind of crazy, you know." You know what I mean, man, right? And I was like, "Yeah, okay. I can't bring this kid out in public." And he said he had done acid before. He still says he's done it once before. He admitted during the trip that hadn't done it as much as he said because I asked him. But he had done a half a hit before, and I gave him a full hit of some decently strong LSD. So he's tripping pretty hard. I'm just kind of chilling there. I mean, it's only one hit, so I'm having a great time. He's having a good time. It's just super intense. We're hanging out. Eventually, Jack gets home from work, and he gets home from work, sees the state that Daniel's in, and is just kind of laughing. He says hi to me. We kind of introduce ourselves because we had met in passing before, but never really officially. And he goes back upstairs to do who knows what, maybe even take a shower. Probably not because he was working on his car after, but just de stress after work. And he comes back downstairs, and eventually he goes back out to the garage and starts working on his car. And Daniel and I are out there just kind of smoking and chilling, listening to music, waiting for Mark to show up. Or not Mark, sorry. We're waiting for Jack to show up. And so Eventually, he gets a nut stuck in his socket, and it is so stuck that we literally used a 14-ton press to try and get it out, and we could not. So he ruined one of his sockets, and it sucks because they're really nice snap-on sockets, but you do as you do. Um, but so this is about the time that Jack shows up, and Jack is the kid who wanted to try DMT for the first time. And so he shows up, we kind of say hi, we haven't seen each other in a while. And something about Jack that you guys should know is I always thought this kid was on Xanax in high school. Like I always knew it. I always told everybody who asked, like, does he seem fucked up? I'm like, yeah, he's on Xanax. Everybody would say, no, it can't be that. I asked him when we were hanging out, and he told me, yes, it was Xanax. I knew it. It was so funny. But so we're just smoking up, having a good time, and he got gotten off them since then, which is good because those things are the devil. But he decides that he wants to do DMT, and he decided he wanted to do it in the cold garage where we smoke weed and cigarettes. And I was like, no, dude, this garage is cold. It's full of clutter. Like, we're not doing DMT in this garage. We're doing it in somebody's bedroom. And so eventually they were like, whatever, it's my drugs, so they're gonna have to do it the way I say. If they want to do them at all, that is. But we go back to Daniel's bedroom, and Mark had decided to join us. He wasn't sure if he was gonna try it or not, but he decided to at least join us to see what it was gonna be like. And so Jack goes first. I told him to start light, which he did. He took 2 hits off of my DMT cartridge, and he seemed pretty intrigued by the effects. He was definitely shocked how fast it came on. And then after that, Daniel did a little bit, and he was on acid, so it's obviously going to hit him a little bit stronger. But I wouldn't even necessarily say stronger, it's just different. But passes it back to me, and I do a little bit. And none of us are breaking through. We're all just on like a medium dose of DMT. Even though we're on acid, it's still not a breakthrough. And I offer it to Mark, and he actually does decide to take a couple small hits. And he's very shocked at how chill it is. He's shocked at how kind of like calming a low dose of DMT can be, which it can be very, very calming. And so he's definitely happy with that. He decided not to push it any further. He did a couple more low doses, but he didn't really feel like pushing it further that day, which is respectable. And so, but after we were all kind of coming down from the first dose, 20, 30 minutes later, Jack decides that he wanted to go for a breakthrough. And so I tell him, all right, take 4 or 5 hits. And like, when you feel absolutely strange and like something's about to happen and you might die, you need to take one more really big hit. And everybody was kind of put off when I said that. And I was like, well, if it feels like something's about to happen, you haven't done enough DMT because it's happening when you do enough. And they all were like, all right, that makes sense. And so he was at this point sitting up against the wall on the bed, kind of like widthwise, not lengthwise. So he didn't have enough space to lay down. And so I told him, like, you're gonna want to lay down for this. And so he lays down, and I'm like, all right. And that was a good time to sit back up because when you fall back, that's where your head's gonna land on the pillow. And everybody kind of chuckled. They were like, he's not gonna fall back. So he takes the hits, and literally, as I grab the cartridge from him and I say, you're probably gonna want to lay back as you exhale, he just flops back like a fish and starts laughing and giggling and making strange noises and kind of moving around. All the signs of like really grabbing on to the molecule of DMT with your brain. And so once he's done with that, he comes back. And if for those of you who've never done DMT, it does last like 10 to 15 minutes, but the main real like meat and potatoes are in the first two, maybe 3 minutes. Like, that's where the real breakthrough happens. You don't break through for 15 minutes unless you're on a, like, IV drip or something, I guess, but I've never done that, so I wouldn't know. Um, but yeah, so he comes back and he was kind of off, but he told us that that was the first drug he had tried. He wasn't really sure if he liked it or not. And I like respectable, and he was kind of enamored, of course, questioning what the fuck just happened to him. But so he has a seat on a chair. He gets out of the bed. At this point, Daniel decides he wants to break through. And he had done low doses of DMT before, but never a breakthrough. And he was on LSD, so. But of course, I let him. He's an adult. He can make that decision. Uh, and so he does 4 to 5 good big hits of DMT out of the cartridge, and he flops back, and he's quiet for a few seconds, so then he just starts screaming about all the information and how it's too much information. And I'll try and simulate. He was like, information, there's so much information, like something like that. But you get it, full on, just out of it, tripping very, 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 very hard. And so once he comes back from that, I decide that all right, I kind of want to break through now. And I've done DMT and LSD before, so it wasn't like anything necessarily new to me. But I decide, all right, I'll break through. And some of you may be questioning where the ketamine comes into play. That's later. We'll get to that. So I decide to do my breakthrough. I take my 5 big hits. I lay back, I have the breakthrough, and I sit up, and everybody's questioning to me why, like, they're like, how are you not, like, making a bunch of noises? And I was like, I've done this before, guys. You don't understand. Like, when you've done it before, it's different. I mean, it's still a wonderfully profound experience, but it's not necessarily shocking. Uh, but so after we do that, I was kind of the last to go, and then we had decided that we were kind of good on DMT for a bit. We might return to it later, which we as a group never really did, but I did, and we'll get to that. So after that, we were like, all right, well, that was really fun. And now we're kind of like moving as a group because we had all been doing that together. And we go back out to the garage, we smoke some cigarettes together, we're smoking some weed together. We're having a great time just chatting about the DMT experience and everybody's life and whatnot, just shooting the shit. And then eventually it's time for Jack to go. He's forget exactly why he had to go. I think he had to work the next day or something. He had something to be up for the next day and he had to go. It was getting kind of late. And then after that, Mark decides that he wants to go back up to his apartment with his girlfriend. And so he goes back up there. And so it's just me and Daniel hanging out at this point. And we decide to go back to his room. We play some video games for a while. And then we go down to the basement because he's like, oh, we should go down to the basement and get some drinks. And I was like, sure, I'm down for a drink. We go down to the basement and there's a fully stocked bar. I mean, like, gallons of liquor there. And I was like, dude, what's this? And he's like, this is the landlord's bar. They said I could just have whatever I want. And I was like, dude, that's sick. So we make ourselves a few drinks. I think we had like a Jack and Coke and maybe a shot or something. But we're not getting super drunk. We're just getting a nice little relaxing buzz going for the come down of our acid trip. And after a little bit of playing video games and sipping on our drinks, we decide that we want to go make some burgers. And so we make some burgers, we make dinner, we eat up, and then Daniel decides he wants a milkshake. And so I'm like, all right, I'm game for a milkshake. I could not finish my milkshake. Uh, Especially I was still kind of on acid. I just couldn't finish it. It was a lot, but I finished a good half of my milkshake, and by this point, it was probably right around like 11 o'clock at night. It was time for me to go home. And so I dap up my friend Daniel. He says that he's probably just gonna finish his milkshake and head to bed anyways. And I was like, all right, sick man. It was a real one. Have a good one. So I leave and drive home. Very unadvisable. Please, please, please do not be as stupid as I am and drive under the influence of LSD and alcohol and cannabis. It is a terrible idea. I'm very lucky I did not hurt anyone, but I did what I did and I have to own it. So I get home. Luckily, nothing was hurt. My car, nobody was hurt. Like, but I get home and I go up to my room and I'm smoking some weed, and I decide that I want to do some ketamine to kind of relax a bit. And so I do a little bit of ketamine, and then I decide I want a little bit more ketamine to relax. And once I get into that state of mind from the ketamine and what was left of the acid, I decide that I wanted to do some DMT. And I decided not to break through, but I did do a pretty decent sized dose of it. I took 2 or 3 hits out of my cartridge, which is like medium to high dose DMT, probably around 20, 30 milligrams. And it was quite the experience. It was very strange for me because usually, even when I combine DMT with other psychedelics like acid or mushrooms, it's a pretty clear-headed experience in general. Like, I can keep my train of thought pretty well, but combined with the ketamine, it really wasn't something I could think too well on. I did manage to find, like, myself at some point and could tell myself, like, it'll be over soon. And I mean, it wasn't particularly uncomfortable or unenjoyable. It was just unexpectedly, the DMT added an unexpected greatness to the dissociativeness from the ketamine, if that makes sense. Like, the DMT amplified how dissociated I was from the ketamine, and I'm sure the LSD added something there too. I mean, I know it did, but yeah, that was quite the experience, and it was very interesting because I didn't really take much away from it. I just kind of had that, and then I smoked some more weed, and I don't even think I did any. Maybe I did a little more ketamine, but I went to bed not very long after that. I know that, and I slept like a baby that night. But yeah, that's the story of how I did DMT and ketamine and LSD mixed all together. It was a pretty interesting one. If you guys enjoyed the video and you made it this far, seriously, thank you. Subscribe if you like my content and you want to see more, because there will definitely be a lot more videos coming out soon. Maybe even leave down in the comments how often you'd like to see videos coming out. If you give me a like, that would be very much appreciated. Really help my channel. I'm gonna have some harm reduction videos coming out, and those need to get to as many people as possible. So please like the video and subscribe to spread that information. Thanks, guys.